Hello, thank you for tuning in today. Jamie again here with you. So I want to first start out by discussing a little bit of my experience with conditioning and showing horses. So I'm one of those people that really firmly believes that feeding and conditioning our horses goes hand in hand in how well they're going to perform. And no matter what you're doing with your horse, those two things are going to have a huge impact on what you're doing. And setting up a good conditioning program is not something we should just kind of wing. And for me, I had started out by really kind of just winging it with my horses and applying exercises and things I knew worked, but not really thinking about how they worked together and what I was working on with my horse each and every single time. Now, when we have horses like barrel horses, these are horses that need ultimate levels of power and speed and agility and control and stability at the same time, because you are flying around at top speeds, maneuvering around barrels. So not only do these horses need to be very well conditioned and fast and athletic, they need to be able to be maneuverable. So those two things are going to be some of the top priorities when thinking about creating this program with your horse. I'm going to discuss speed and maneuverability a little bit more in depth. So when we're focusing on those two aspects alone, some of the key things we need to think of when we're looking at how to set up a conditioning program focusing on those things are what goes into creating speed, what goes into creating maneuverability. If we break it down, speed will stem ultimately from the hind end and the horse being able to shift their weight from their front end to their rear end. Because horses, you can think of the hind end as basically like the engine, the power source. So that's where all of that's going to be focused. So exercises like backing and rollbacks and working on transitions on circles is really going to help develop your horse's rear end and their back muscles so that they can really start working on creating like a high launch speed, for lack of better terminology, really. And when we're talking about maneuverability, one of the things that we need to think about is softness. Softness and lightness will play hugely into how maneuverable your horse is. Because if you think about it, if you've got a big old clunky horse that's heavy on the front end, they're not going to be turning very sharply or quickly or lightly. And that's what we need to incorporate into our barrel horses is lightness on the front end and almost an ability, if you were to look at like a cow horse, how they can just go boom, 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 back and forth, on their front end. That's almost the level of agility and maneuverability we need with our barrel horses to get around those barrels and to set ourselves up properly as we approach and turn those barrels without our horses falling all over the place. Or ducking or creating other various bad habits. So some different things you can work on is transitions are always one of my most favorite things to work on for just about anything. But if you think about your transitions, when you perform a transition with your horse, you're working on that communication and connection with your horse in a light manner to where that aid is only visible to you and your horse, sensed by your horse. So if you're working on transitions or different exercises that will get your horse to be thinking about what you're asking them and really in tune with you, that's going to help with your maneuverability. Another thing you can do is practice exercises around cones and working on standing your horse's front end up and getting them to square around that corner so they're not falling down around the corners. Because a lot of times you're going to have a horse approaching a barrel and they're going to want to, drop their shoulder and fall around that corner. And as a result of that, coming out of that barrel, you're going to lose speed, you're going to lose power, and you're not going to have a straight line and to approach your next barrel or to run home. So those are just some of the more minor issues that can occur, but there's so many things you need to think of and be diligent of when you are planning your program. And you also need to consider your horses or your training horses kind of pros and cons of what they're good at, what they're not so good at, what needs improvement. And then you can really kind of focus on creating a program that will intertwine with your training program to optimize your horse or your client's horses in every possible way. The next thing that we need to consider very carefully after speed, agility, and control and maneuverability is, especially for riders who are competing at higher level events or are rodeo to rodeo to rodeo to rodeo, how do we go about keeping and maintaining our horses' athleticism and conditioning level while we are on the road or traveling around? And we don't have a lot of time to juggle all these things. Well, now at this point, we can kind of turn around and look at, in between each of the events or whatever we're doing with our horse, we can implement different aspects of conditioning and maintenance into our regular riding programs. And that's what's really cool about conditioning, is it's so flexible. There's definitely, a right or wrong way to go about it and to do it, but it's very, very flexible. You can easily create and shape a program that works well for you no matter what you're doing, where you're at, what level you're at. It can benefit you in so many ways as a rider or trainer or a shower, competitor shower, pardon me, and your horse all simultaneously. I'm going to discuss a little bit about traditional conditioning methods that are kind of used among standardized flat horse or show horse industries. So typically in a on the ground and under way, I suppose. So they will do a lot of lunging, using surcingles and other gear to help with the horse's shape, body positioning, and so forth, to help with strength and obviously conditioning and strengthening the back and the rear end to help with the horse's drive and shifting that weight. Now, that's also something that's important in barrel racing and so flat horses, they also do a lot of undersaddle stuff, long trotting, backing, stops, turning into the wall, circles, moving your horse laterally, and figure eights, pattern work. There's a lot of pattern work that goes on, and that's some of the traditional undersaddle conditioning methods. I've spoken and heard a lot about many different trainers who use a mixture of riding out in the field or working cows or doing other different activities with their horses, along with obviously strategic training and conditioning in the arena as well. But they use that to add endurance to their horses and kind of create that overall finished horse that doesn't really care a whole lot about anything else that's going on around it. And give the horse a little bit of real-world experience in working some muscles that they maybe wouldn't necessarily work in the arena doing flat work or some traditional other conditioning methods. I truly believe that a horse, when well-rounded, fully finished, all of the methods that we spoke of today need to be incorporated simultaneously. Everything really goes hand in hand and needs to be balanced in training or conditioning your horses.